of the things that we have at the end time that's really pronounced, and that is a fear of prosperity. This prosperity carries with it 7 of the most disabling fears common to man. They stop roughly 91% of the population from ever getting wealthy. But it's worse than that. Certain fears create something that's even worse than that. Like it brings it up to like 99% of the common person not wanting to get wealthy. And that's why some of them, even that are in wealthy families, it's not the power to increase their wealth or control their wealth isn't there from one generation to the next, because these fears have taken over. The first is the what if fear. What if I'm not meant to be wealthy? What if God put a curse on me so I'm not meant to be wealthy? That's common in the Christian world. What if I have to pay taxes? What if it gets stolen? What if I have to pay tithes to God on my increase? What if I'm asked to loan people money? Well, these lead into the other groups, these ones, but it's what ifs that come into. Everything is judged, well, what if, well, what if, well, what if? And then once you start using these what ifs, they become groups of fears that prevent wealth in your life. Group 2 is the fear of standing out as different. When everyone else is losing, shouldn't you program yourself to lose also, so that you don't stand out? One has to belong to the majority peer group or stand out as different. And you see, there's this fear of standing out as different. That's sad, but when you judge yourself or compare yourself, you always end up being in the group with the losers. In group 3 is the fear that friends and relatives will constantly seek to mooch off of you until you're broke again. So why bother to get wealthy? Again, this fear is solved by pre-planning and proper investment advice as to how to handle things. And most people are unwilling to set boundaries or follow a plan when they do have wealth, or when they're planning to get wealth. They haven't pre-thought it out as to what they're going to do with it.
Oh, I have a plan.
Okay? And the wonderful thing about this non-planning is that you can have the best thing and somebody can talk you out of it. When you haven't got this development plan of what you're going to do. Or you could destroy something to make sure that everybody that's involved will lose. And you don't win and they don't win, but you'll listen to somebody tell you something that is guaranteed to bring loss to everyone. And so the need to have this pre-planned and proper is something, but it's work. Or I'd have to write something out so I can understand it, and that's too much work. But it's okay to take $2-3 million loss, as long as you don't have to spend 5 minutes putting a plan together, right?
Maybe for some people.
Well, people that are jealous will always give you advice to lose by, or to cause loss for others. If they're jealous that you might succeed at something that they didn't succeed at, they will advise you, and it may sound logical, but advise you always to lose, not win. Group 4 is a fear that says someone else may prosper more than they have personally, so why bother putting an effort in if somebody else is still going to get more money than they are? Somebody's going to put more work effort into it and succeed more. Why should they bother to do anything? Because they won't be number one. Whoa. Again, it's under that comparisons. Prosperity comes from what you do, not from what you avoid doing. If you had an opportunity of going out and buying a piece of land that you knew had $10 million in gold buried on it, and you found it and covered it back up, you found this treasure of great price, and the land was for sale for $35,000, if you never make the effort to buy the land, is that gold there ever going to be yours?
No.
But if you bought it and you hold on to the land for a year and then discover that you found it there, it's your gold. Isn't that amazing? Treasures that are, if you just bought the land and just found it, it's still the treasure of the previous owner. But if you wait 1 year, it's your treasure. They were supposed to claim it if they had it and remembered it within the year.
And they had 1 year to do it.
Yeah. So, would that be a good investment? $35,000 out, $10 million in.
Yes.
But you know, most people will say no. What if they had to pay taxes? What if God wanted 10%?
Right there.
It's his to be on all of it.
You see, they won't take the move. They'll sit back and avoid doing anything so they don't have to pay taxes, and they don't have to tithe, and they don't have to help anybody, and they don't have to be concerned about being prosperous. They'll let it rot in the ground rather than buy the land, which they could probably turn around and sell again, just put a little development on it. And they won't do anything. That is what has become a very common thing in this TV age. Sit back and let somebody entertain you rather than use your head to be productive and helping others. These type of fears that you prefer to wallow in sloth and hope that someone will look after you or make you look good by giving you a bunch of money without you having to do anything, are a very common problem in today's age. You know, it's just, well, it's a welfare society. You just wait for the state to make you wealthy. The state never makes anybody wealthy. They make you poor, they enslave you, but they never make you wealthy. Group 5, the fear of the responsibility to steward money correctly. Just like the man who buried his talent so he would not have to see it grow, is what this is referring to. The guy with 5 talents put it to work and doubled it. The guy with 2 talents doubled his and was rewarded for it. But the guy that buried it got no reward, and what he did have was taken away from him. Well, approximately 80% of all people have the fear, this type of fear. And it is why they seek the job just above bankruptcy to be their guide. That's what JOB stands for, just above bankruptcy.
Oh, I see.
Just over broke.
Yeah, or just over broke. So instead of investing in prosperity's ways, they invest in bankruptcy. They invest in debts. That's why the Canadian American government believe that they can spend their way out of debt. Impossible. But as part of this, well, we don't have to be responsible. We can just make more debts and spend our way out of it. Doesn't happen. Whether a talent for success is buried, or an opportunity is buried, or an idea given to you by God is discarded, people cling to this fear of responsibility. They don't want to be responsible to steward. Rather than trust in the hope that, hey, I've been given this, that means I got some talent there that I can use to cause prosperity to flow my way. Therefore, poverty rules the world, and 80% of the people remain its slave. They remain the victims of poverty. They become losers in everything they want to do, and they seek the communist ideals of stealing from the successful in order to finance their fears of prosperity. So you steal from the rich to enslave the poor, and then everybody's happy, right? Because eventually there's no money to steal from the rich. Then what do you do? And it's been shown in many societies, the societies that follows those principles always collapses. Always. So we got that in Alberta. They just got rid of it from BC, but Saskatchewan got rid of it. Ontario's got a liberal government that's all pro-communist. So, what do? In group 6, this is the fear of paying taxes. This fear is so pronounced that people will lie, cheat, squander, and even do role-playing to avoid paying taxes. They fear seeing the government squander their money, or they believe that they will hire more civil servants to oppress them. If you got money, the government's going to hire people to oppress you. And with the revenue agencies, that's probably what their job description is like. Oppress as many as possible. This fear is fully manifesting in these last days, and it produces an extension fear. Whenever the government gets too much money, they create wars to kill off the youth. So as long as they got no money, they don't go to war. As soon as they got money, they go to war. Somewhere, somehow. They also fear the endless socialist programs that money attracts. As soon as the government has money, they got all these socialist schemes they want to produce. They can afford them in a good time, but what about when the bad time comes? When it really gets expensive to run these programs. You consider that 60% of the money collected in taxes goes to the health system. And yet, before it came into existence, people paid their own health care, and there wasn't that debt. As soon as the socialists, there was money, then the socialist system had to take over to make sure that there would be a debt to steal from the rich and enslave the poor. They also fear that having everything look good as long as you are spending somebody else's money. They have this fear that people that will not work will be spending their money. So why should they put any effort out into working or prospering when somebody else is going to spend it that didn't do any work? Group 7. They have a fear of tithing, giving, and serving by sharing. This fear is so common that about 97% of the Christian world has it as their chief doctrine of belief. It not only enslaves them in thanklessness and ingratitude, and even self-sabotage, it creates walls of illogical fears around them. Intimidation, oppressions, demeaning takes over. One cannot prosper and defy the laws of sowing and reaping. When you leave God out of the picture, you're leaving prosperity out of the picture. It is like the farmer who forgot to plant his crop. He sees his neighbor crop growing and then decides to burn his land and his neighbor's land because he could not stand seeing his neighbors blessed or even bear to see them prosper. So he chose, out of his fear, to kill, steal, and destroy. And we've seen that here lately. The school system and the negligence found in the teaching of kingdom prosperity laws have led the world down a path to worshiping poverty, worshiping loss. They have this sympathy-seeking worship of victimization. And you gotta ask yourself, if you cannot see yourself as prosperous, then you cannot see yourself as a winner, victor, or even a finisher of anything that you set your hand to do. And this means you are locked into the fears against prosperity. You fear prosperity. Therefore, recognize it, resist the temptation to speak the words that entrap you into prosperity, into this poverty or anti-prosperity. Rescind the wrong words spoken and become prosperous and blessed by God. Find out what He says to do and go and do it. You can overpower fears and become the winner and become prosperous. But you have to recognize what those fears are, because they're turnover items.